The contents of this podcast does not represent the opinions of others and is solely the opinions of Harv ARONSON based on his experience, knowledge, and research. Welcome to the Total Sports Recall, your source for sports news and topics from a different angle. And now here's your host, Harv ARONSON.
Welcome to the Total Sports Recall podcast, and this show has a very special guest. If you are a Pittsburgh Steelers fan, then you are in for a treat. For those of you who remember the 1970s Steelers dynasty teams, then you will recall the punter for the Steelers championship teams that won Super Bowl 13 and 14. He is our special guest today, and that is Mr. Craig Colquitt. Drafted out of the University of Tennessee in the third round of the 1978 NFL Draft by Pittsburgh, Craig Colquitt remained a member of the Steelers from 1978 through 1984, but was on injury reserve for the 1982 season. Craig played one final season with the Indianapolis Colts in 1987, and after retirement would see his two sons and a nephew become NFL players, all three as punters, just like Craig. Between sons Dustin and Britton, Craig and his two sons were part of four Super Bowl championship teams, Dustin with the Kansas City Chiefs in Super Bowl 54 and Britton with the Denver Broncos in Super Bowl 50. Craig Colquitt was born in Knoxville, Tennessee, wore jersey number 5 with the Steelers, and was inducted into the Knoxville Hall of Fame in July of 2009. In 97 career games, Craig Colquitt punted 431 times and impressively had just one punt blocked. His career average for the 97 games he played was an equally impressive 41.3 yards per kick. Craig, I'd like to welcome you to the Total Sports Recall podcast and say that it's an honor to have you on the show. Before we get into it, I want to know what the injury was that kept you out of that 1982 season.
Dramatic injury, but the Achilles tendon. I ruptured it during the off-season, staying in condition, and missed out on the 82 season. It was more dramatic than just a torn Achilles tendon. I also lost out on financial benefits of that season too, because I was labeled football injury, non-football, which is a classification of, in other words, the NFL doesn't have to pay.
Wow. I'll bet Aaron Rodgers didn't take advantage of that this year.
It's very today. See, he's injured on the field, or at least on. So it's a different situation. So he gets his $25 million per play, which is what he had $75 million guaranteed. So there was three plays and he ended. So pretty good payday.
What a difference from 1982. Well, at the intro of the show, Craig, part of the original Steelers fight song, you're going to hear it when you hear this back. Part of the original Steelers fight song was played, sung by Jimmy Pole. Interestingly enough, I was a jockey at a country radio station when I was in college, owned by Jimmy Pole. And I clearly remember a back room in the studio containing mountains of these vinyl records of the 45 type of that very fight song. If you saw last week's Steeler game in Las Vegas, the Steelers faithful in attendance was incredible. I'm sure you remember the original fight song, but as a player on two Steelers championship teams, what memories from that era do you have regarding Steelers fans?
Just like what you saw in Las Vegas. I didn't get to see that game, but I was listening to it when I was traveling. But the Steeler faithful is the only way to label it. I would say they're the best following NFL team in the nation. I know I live outside of Nashville, and people in Tennessee Titan fans can't stand the Steeler fans, so they sell their ticket. And it ends up being 60% black and gold out here. So, yeah, it's a great thing to be connected to.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's always been that way. And I've attended several Jacksonville games down here, and there was a local disc jockey that had a bet with me prior to one of the games, and he said, how many fans do you think are going to show up from the Steelers fan base? And I said, oh, my God, you kidding? I said, that stadium's going to be full. He says, you'll be lucky if you get 15,000. Craig, I went to that game, and half of that stadium was terrible towels. I was just amazed. My jaw dropped. There had to be 35,000 Steelers fans there. It's an unbelievable.
I believe it. They're everywhere.
Yeah,
I traveled
absolutely.
for years. I traveled for 20 years since I was in, everywhere I go, people show me the rings, so it's a great, but there's the
And
opposite. There's the opposite side of it too. I would meet people that were football fans, but they'd say, man, I hated the Steelers growing up. I hate it. I'd see somebody that almost wanted to pay my mortgage. It was,
oh my gosh.
Steeler fan. So it's a great experience.
Well, it definitely is a love or hate relationship. You either love them or you hate them. And one of the things about the fan base is, and like myself, is that a lot of Pittsburghers had migrated out of the city and are ending up somewhere else. And obviously they're not going to give up their loyal fanship to the Steelers. And so they remain Steeler fans, but they're just somewhere else. And I think that's a lot of, yeah. So it doesn't happen often that a team wins back-to-back Super Bowls, but you were fortunate to be part of the Steelers teams that accomplished that feat. Obviously, at Super Bowl 13 and 14, Art Rooney Sr. was still alive. The Chief was one of the most respected and loved owners in the National Football League. Every Steelers fan back then, including myself, we had this feeling that we just personally knew Art Rooney Sr. He was that special. And what are your thoughts on the original owner of the Pittsburgh Steelers?
For me, and I'm sure everybody, you could even see it with Terry Bradshaw when they were talking or whatever. There was just a relaxation when he came into the room. And the best experience I had with Art was I was in the locker room with Dustin and my son. And at the time, he's not 3 years of age yet, probably at 2.5. And we're sitting right at the door entry from the outside, which is where my locker was. Big square room, so you could see all of the players inside the room. But anyway, Art Rooney turned the corner into the room, and I looked up, and here's this big cigar, and here's Art and glasses. And he looked down, took a cigar out of his mouth. He said, "Who's this?" And his deep. And I said, "This is Dustin, my son Dustin." He said, "You all follow me." And we walked through the training room, through the offices, back to his office. And he walked behind his desk and turned around. And me and Dustin sat down. Dustin's, grabbing at everything. Of course, he's a little boy. And Art turned back around and he handed us a baseball. And the baseball said, "To Dusty, you'll be a superstar someday, Art Rooney Sr."
Wow.
And we still have the ball. Dustin
God.
It. He wanted to do all these things, and little boy wanted to play with it, so I was able to hide it. Now mounted in his collection, but, it's kind of prophetic. They said, "You'll be a superstar someday," and Dustin ended up playing 17 years in the NFL. So if he only knew.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
But you could tell even by watching him on film, on television, that was his character. Such a great human being. Unbelievable. He cared so much for people.
Very modest.
And and that's why he was one of the most respected owners among the National Football League.
Right.
And when he lifted, I can still remember like yesterday when he hoisted that trophy at Super Bowl IX. That memory is as clear as a bell, and people were in tears, people were applauding. It just felt so good for the guy.
About
so many years.
It was about 40 years. Didn't he? I think he bought the team in 33.
He did.
If my memory.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And so the Super Bowl was in 74. That's exceptional. 41 years and boom, there it is.
Absolutely. And the rumor is, and I've seen it, some say it's true, some say it's not, that he bought the Steelers with horse track winnings of $2,500. Some people say it is a true story. Others say, no, it's just a myth.
Yeah, the myth is Punter.
Yeah.
I heard it. 300,000.
300,000.
Yeah, I heard it was over 300,000. So,
that would have been like millions of dollars back in 1933.
Yeah. Well, it was winnings is what I heard too. So.
Well, obviously the Super Bowl. Go ahead.
It worked. Whatever he got it worked out. It worked out huge for the city of Pittsburgh.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
They I wish Nashville would go red, and there's a baseball team here, and our I guess it's kind of a blue and gold color, and you like Pittsburgh has, with the baseball and the hockey and Steelers. I mean, that just belongs. I think color's a big deal.
Well, yeah, before you came along to the Steelers, the Penguins used to be blue and white. And then they decided to join the other two teams and become black and gold. But yeah, if you look online, you can see the old blue and white uniforms. So,
wow.
Well, obviously the Super Bowl victories to stand out as great memory for you, wearing black and gold, of course. But aside from those two great games, what are your most vivid memories from being a member of the Pittsburgh Steelers?
How I was treated in the city. Yeah, people didn't recognize me because my face wasn't all over TV like Bradshaw and Lambert, Franco Harris, Lynn Swan, those people. But my name is so unusual, it was recognized when I was out in the city. So I like to brag to people that my first 2 years I was single. So I was all over the city, of course, being a young man. I never had to pay for a meal or a drink when they heard my name. Yeah, I was treated like royalty, and that's a really fond memory, just how I was treated. But people in Pittsburgh like that anyway. But when you get into the conversation about the Pittsburgh Steelers, it always turns into a generational thing. How long their family have been Steeler fans. So that's, it's approaching 100 years.
Yeah. Yeah, and one of my neighbors growing up, his father bought a season ticket in 1969. They've never given up that ticket. He still has them. So he's a season ticket holder. And, yeah, they hand down their tickets. They're not about to give them up. They're a special group. And I was just had an interview last week, and we were talking about the Steelers and Steeler players and how some are very well respected. And I was telling them a story that I had heard of Troy Polamalu going into a restaurant in Pittsburgh, and he was eating dinner with his wife, and nobody bothered him. And he just had his own peace of mind, was able to eat dinner and eat in peace. Nobody bothered him to ask for an autograph. And he was so impressed by that he stood up afterwards. And this is the way the story goes, is that he turned around to everybody and said, I want to thank everybody for letting me have, my peace over here and eat my meal in peace. And for that, I'm going to pay for everybody's dinner tonight that's in here. So he was a good example. Yeah. So whether it's true or not, I don't know, but that's a story I heard. And I wouldn't doubt it because Troy is definitely.
Yeah, I wouldn't doubt it. The funny thing is what I immediately thought of, they were probably tentative, and this is me talking, because that dude knocked the crap out of people. I mean, he was vicious. Oh, yeah. So there's probably a little bit of fear there, just like if it was Jack Lambert.
Yeah. He was a special player for sure. So your jersey was number 5 with the Steelers. Was that always your number? And if so, why was 5 your choosing? Is that what you wore at Tennessee?
No, it's interesting. When I got there, I didn't know I really had no history other than number 18, which already was taken by Cliff Stout. And, I knew then, but I wanted to cooperate. So Tony Parisi, who is the equipment manager of the Steelers, he said, what number do you want? Will this work? And it was number 5. And I said, looks good to me. And then he pulls out a helmet, and he said, this is Terry Hanratty's helmet. Is this okay? And it had a single bar on it. I've never worn a single bar. And I put that on. I said, man, I'm going to be able to see the ball with this helmet. So I had Terry Hanratty's helmet. I told him I was going to send it to him and get it signed by him too. Wow. So, but I need to do that. But it was it worked.
So he would have been off the team by the time you got there then.
Oh yeah. I'm not sure how long he was gone. I don't know if it was a year. I'd have to look at his bio. But yeah, he was gone. It's funny that the helmet was passed down instead of him taking it with him.
That is interesting.
Yeah, it should have been thrown away because it's one of those old suspension cushion combinations. And whenever I got hit, it was like a bell ringing in my head.
Oh, no.
There's no protection.
So you were never able to send it to him?
I just haven't taken the time. In fact, I've got his information. I need it because we're not getting any younger. I'm selling my kind of threw me off everything I'm doing. I'm just because I'm selling my house. It's the first time I've set up my man cave. So now it's this great looking historic thing. In fact, my grandkids call it a museum instead of a man cave because everything's so old.
That's funny. Well, our listeners aren't going to be able to see you on camera like I can. I can see you're wearing your University of Tennessee gear there. I know you keep up with the Volunteers. So this season, they're 3-1 as of the taping of the show, which is today, September 30th. The Vols are coming off the season last year when they finished 11-2, and for their head coach, Josh Heupel. I might not be pronouncing that correctly, so you'll have to tell me if I pronounced it right. But Josh Heupel, he's in his third season after debuting in 2021 with a 7-6 record. Your thoughts on Coach Heupel and the state of Tennessee football?
I'm really excited, and here's a even more reason to be excited. But what I like about Heupel is the game is moving so fast. If you get a chance to watch, in fact, tonight they play South Carolina at 7:30 your time. You can't go to the restroom because it's moving so quick, and teams have to get opportunity to substitute to slow it down even. But it's very exciting. Unfortunately, Hooker we had last year was just dramatically good and got hurt in the South Carolina game and was taken over by Joe Milton, who's the quarterback now, and he's got some rough edges, but he's 6'5". He's like 248 pounds. He can throw an orange, and you can look it up. He can throw an orange 100 yards, but sometimes he throws a 10-yard, 50 yards. But what's real exciting is my son Dustin is the specialty teams coach at the university. So he's coaching now, which is really exciting because now he's been all those years as a player, all those years as a pro player, and now he's coaching, what he did for a living. And Dustin was a soccer player. He ended up 2 weeks before his senior year started walking on in high school. His senior year, he'd never even played football, and now look where he's been. It's amazing. Mm-hmm. Big Tennessee thing. Yeah, Tennessee got me to Pittsburgh, so I like Pittsburgh.
Well, we're glad for that because we enjoyed having you as a member of the Pittsburgh Steelers, and I know you're talking about Dustin. So both your sons and nephew are also Volunteers products. They went to the University of Tennessee. I'm sure a father could not be prouder than to witness two sons not just making the NFL as a punter like yourself, but to achieve the highest level of success as you did, which is winning a Super Bowl. That fact alone must make you grin ear to ear.
Yeah, when Britton got his, it was very exciting, and we think, wow, it's hard to believe, really. I mean, it's really hard to believe. But when Dustin got his Super Bowl, you can't make this up. In fact, I had a reporter reach out to me, and he said, Craig, I'm kind of a mathematician, and there's no way to number what has happened with your family. Same college, same position, Super Bowls, NFL. He said, and it was funny, he said, if the only way I could put this in perspective is if the odds of this happening are so extreme that comparatively it would be like being bit by a shark, hit by a car, and struck by lightning all in the same hour. So we laughed, and I said, but I, you know what? I have peace now. Both of the boys are not in football anymore. I've watched for 25 years in anxiousness. So now I'm enjoying football again.
So on that note, do any of your two sons have sons that might be going into football?
Dustin's 16-year-old, unfortunately, has strained his back, and his 15-year-old, both are punting. And both are very good athletes and really good students. So that's if it doesn't work out at the next level. But yeah, we've got the third generation heading that way.
Amazing. That would be really something.
Yeah.
So I had a thought leading up to this interview, Craig, is that every football fan knows about the Manning family tree in the NFL. And of course, there's the amazing Matthews lineage of Clay Matthews Jr., his brother Bruce Matthews, and then the 8 sons between Clay and Bruce, all playing professionally. With only Clay, the third, winning a Super Bowl. He did that with Green Bay. But with that said, while Peyton Manning and his brother Eli have won 4 Super Bowls, the Colquitts have something they do not: a father who won multiple Super Bowls and 2 sons who added 2 more. That makes your family and the Mannings equal on Super Bowl rings. But for Archie Manning, and you must feel for him because he never won a championship, despite being a very good quarterback, he played for some really bad Saints teams, and at one time they actually became known as the Aints. Your thoughts on all this?
Very exciting. And that part, going back to the Archie Manning thing, we played in New Orleans. And I think 100% of the fans that were there had garbage bags, those old paper bags on their heads.
I remember that.
Yeah, unfortunately, injured. So a former Tennessee player, his name's escaping right now, ended up being the quarterback. But the fans booed the whole game. I mean, I don't even know why they paid to come there. But one of these days, I want to sit down and interview Archie and say, were you as nervous or anxious as I was every time there was a snap to your kids? Every time there was a injury, performance, just all of that intertwined. It was difficult. And for years, I had DirecTV, which I estimated I paid about $27,000 for.
Oh, my God.
For years, I literally had, previous channel. I'd go back and forth and watch Dustin and Britton punting at the same time, in different games, just
That's
for years. Yeah, it was nerve-wracking. I'm glad it's over.
That's crazy. Yeah. That's something else. And Peyton was a Tennessee product as well, right? I think Peyton Manning graduated from University of Tennessee.
Yeah, he broke the tradition. They thought he'd follow Archie. I think it was okay. And but when he came to Tennessee, it changed the climate in Pittsburgh because here's 6'5", whatever he is, 6'6", student of football. So it just pivoted Tennessee. In my mind, just started football all over again, the excitement of it. Because we won the national championship the year after he left in '98.
And I think T. Martin was the quarterback there, wasn't he?
That's right. Yeah. And so he kind of set that up. All of a sudden the quarterback in the pass, the big deal again.
And it's interesting because T. Martin ended up on the Steelers, which never panned out. But I thought he was a really good quarterback. I thought he was going to be okay with Pittsburgh, but that wasn't the case. Have you ever spoken to Peyton Manning, being that you're both Tennessee products?
Haven't had a conversation of and glad to meet you and that kind of thing. But Dustin and Britton and Peyton, they're very close.
Oh, so that's good. That's very cool.
Yeah. All they are is big.
Yeah. Well, obviously, you're a huge Tennessee football follower. And is there any current involvement with the school that you have, if any?
Well, one of the exciting things is I started a foundation. I can't remember what year it was right now. We call it the First Family of Fourth Down. So we donate money at that time to start the foundation. The money in that foundation pays for the scholarship of an athlete, or probably 2 or 3 by now because of the interest. And Dustin and Britton donated a large sum of money, and we have this area in the athletic complex is called the Colquitt Atrium. And when you walk up the steps, it's this huge area where there's trophies and pictures of pro players and just memorabilia and everything in that room. It's called the Colquitt Atrium. So that's perpetuity. Yeah, I'm excited about our past and playing there, but that is a legacy that's hard to describe because it's give back.
Yeah. Well, if anybody listening is a University of Tennessee fan or lives in that area, they're going to have to go take a look at that.
Yeah, it's worth going up there. And the Peyton Manning room is right next to that. So Peyton,
Oh my gosh.
I think his donation was well over $1 million, but it's where the team meets. Beautiful arena type room where they're all together.
Well, for me, I still, when the discussion comes up about greatest quarterback ever, Peyton Manning for me is number one, without a doubt. I mean, that guy was like a machine, and he was so analytical when he was on the field. He'd just pick you apart. Amazing quarterback.
Yeah. Wasn't very mobile, but up for it big time.
But if it comes to football smarts, yeah. If he comes to football smarts, he's at the top of the list, without a doubt.
You're right.
Well, as a retired NFL player, how much current football do you watch of the National Football League? And with you being a former Steeler, do you still follow the black and gold? If so, what's your opinion of the current state of the team, as well as your opinion of Mike Tomlin? Because I want to point out, most people know, it's just incredible that Pittsburgh has had only 3 head coaches since 1969. That's just downright amazing.
Wow. Well, I believe it. Tomlin's a godsend for players. He's I met him in a Kansas City game. Dustin brought me down on the field, so I met him very brief. And he was electric. Al, he made me comforted as being an alumni, because that's his big thing, keeping us all connected. So, yeah, they played Cleveland Browns. Wasn't that just a couple of weeks ago?
Yeah. It was the second game of the season.
I'm watching this game and I'm going, this is the biggest dog fight I've watched in a long time. It was very entertaining. It is brutal. Cleveland's kind of coming on, and I think Pickett for Pittsburgh is right on the edge of being a superstar. So I'm excited. I do follow it. I watch as many games as possible. I'm into football.
Yeah, I agree. And a lot of people were disappointed from the first game of the season when they got blown out by San Francisco, and Kenny Pickett had a terrible game, and he really wasn't even that much better in the Cleveland game. But last week he had a really good game, and people are going all crazy about Matt Canada, but should be fired, the offensive coordinator. I'm thinking to myself, this is 2 games. I should give it a break. We only played 2 games, and all of a sudden they had a really good offensive game against Las Vegas, and now all of a sudden people are changing their tune. I'm like, you have to give a team a chance to gel and come together. And to their defense, San Francisco had an outstanding defense. They have an outstanding defense. Cleveland's defense is very good. So you're up against 2 excellent defenses. So they'll come around. Pickett, I think he is going to be very good. It's funny because when he was drafted, you may have heard the story, his hands were too small. He wasn't going to be a good quarterback in the NFL because his hands are too small. I said, that's the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. Unreal.
Well, Bradshaw was too dumb.
I remember that. What Hollywood Henderson, remember that comment?
Oh, yeah.
he couldn't spell cat if you spotted him the C and the T. Oh, my gosh.
Bradshaw has 4 Super Bowl rings. So, you can't predict the future. You can't predict the innate personalities or nation somebody has to succeed. And I'm excited for it just because he's in the environment where if he does succeed, boy, he's going to have a tremendous fan base. So, but I think he's right at the threshold.
Well, I think the Pittsburgh fan base is already latched onto him. I think everybody likes him a lot, and lucky for him, he's got an unbelievable defense behind him. And we were talking about families before. Now you got Joey Porter Jr. playing for the Steelers, and when they drafted him, I'm like, oh, this is going to be great because the fans are going to love Joey Porter Jr. just based on the fact that his father was such a popular player for the Steelers.
That's pretty fun. I'm excited about it. Well, I have to see what I have on games coming up, but yeah, I'm probably not going to miss the black and gold.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's move into a little something different. I know I read that you have written children's books, or at least one. Could you tell our listeners a little bit about that aspect of your life?
Yeah, when Dustin and Britton were born, when my first child was born, the emotional impact of a kid coming into your life's amazing. But then when the grandkids came along, it was even more dramatic because now I'm not so responsible for them on a day-to-day basis, and there's not that anxiousness to support. But then, how can I contribute to their lives? So I'm an artist and writer. I'm working on even a couple of novels and a biography, and I said I want to leave a legacy of creativity. And one day I was eating breakfast with one of my grandkids, one of the younger, and he asked me what happened to my hair. And I'm bald, and I asked Britton. I said, "Did you hear what he said?" He said, "Dad, he's just a kid." And I went, "No, there's something here with this." I mean, all of a sudden he's noticed me. He's 4 years of age, and I'm thinking how this fits in who we are as people, as human beings. So I said, okay, I'm going to do this. And so I write the book and I do the artwork and publish it and printed up 2,500 copies. And I've probably sold about 2,100,
Wow.
2,000, given away about 100 of them, I guess. But it was just a give back that the kids, grandkids as they get older, they can look at that and go, oh, I want to do this too. I believe in creation. I believe in God, and God gave us the ability to be creative. Like you've created a podcast, and that's you're reaching people. It's a big influential opportunity. So that's what that was about.
Excellent. That's very good. What was the name of the book? The title of the book?
JoJo, what happened to your hair?
Yeah, I was joking. I
yeah,
was joking with my wife the other day because in the movie Ghost, I don't know if you've seen the movie, but there was a line where this woman's deceased husband came back as a ghost, and he looks over at her and says, "What'd you do to your hair?" And I said, that reminded me of that when I saw the title of your book. I had to laugh. I said, "Oh my gosh, it's from the movie Ghost."
Yeah, well, that's fun. Yeah, it's part of the legacy thing, something to leave. But I also want to keep moving. I'm 69, and I play golf, and I'm still hitting the golf ball. I catch. I'm 270 yards. I mean,
wow, good for you.
The game's getting better and better, and for me, and I'm hoping I pass away like my mom in her sleep at age 73 because I stay busy. And the body just gives out. So it's part of that. I can't just sit and watch football. I've got to keep doing other things too.
Well, that's something we have in common. I like to keep moving myself, and I can't sit still.
Yeah, it's all about how we think. It's all about what we take into our bodies, into our mind, into our bodies. So, that's part of the book when it comes out is, aging is a gift. People say all the time, I wasn't even born when you played, and I'll say, well, I hope you make it as far as I have, because I've lived a crazy life, good life. But it's very exciting to be alive.
Yeah. Well, one more area I'd like to ask you about is, and I read this about you, I did some research on your background, is your involvement with the Christian Worldview films. And then I discovered in February of last year, this would be 2022, you were named as board chair for the Empower Me Center. Can you give us a little more insight into your involvement with both those organizations?
Yeah, that's pretty exciting you brought that up. The Empower Me Center is a group of individuals, primarily women, and then, of course, the parents of special needs kids. So I've joined them because of a friend whose daughter just recently passed away after being 24 years of age. She never uttered a human word. She had to be constantly cared for, but lived 24 years. And this couple were fully dedicated to her. And I found when I met this group, the actual Empower Me Centers for the parents. because the parents' lives are so dramatically affected by a special needs child. They kind of need a break. And interestingly, yesterday I had lunch with the executive director and one of the marketing directors, and they got a phone call this week from an anonymous donor who gave them $1 million. So,
Wow.
a huge donation. And we did a luncheon in 22 or 21, first luncheon I'd ever done in my little town, and we hope to raise $50,000. We raised $210,000 at a luncheon.
Wow. That's amazing.
So the community is soft-hearted about children and especially special needs because everyone could parent a special needs child. I mean, that could happen. There's no guarantee. So that's a great thing to be a part of because they bought land and we've got a $25 million project to put a state-of-the-art facility for these children. Because an interesting thing, when you see a special needs child come into the center, or even before they're getting there, they know they're going to be around people similar to them. And how they react is very interesting. So it's just like us when we walk into a church setting or social setting and we're with familiar faces, we light up. So it's a great thing to be a part about because these people that are working this and these parents have huge hearts.
Wow. And this center is this also in Tennessee?
It's in Lebanon. Everything's about 6 miles from me. So right here.
Oh, very good. And you're still working with Worldview Films? Is that something of the past? You still on that project?
Yeah, that's just something I wanted to be a part of. Nothing's happened with that because the storylines that there's a possibility that it could work back through that. That would be kind of like a fundraiser opportunity. Kind of what I'm looking at.
Excellent. Well, Craig, again, it's been an honor to have you on Total Sports Recall, and I'm sure Steeler fans listening, as well as any Tennessee Volunteer fans that might be out there, have enjoyed hearing all that you've spoken about. And I'll tell you the truth, I'd like to invite you back for a return visit, and you've been a great interview. I think if your two sons are interested, I'd be excited to have the three of you come on to talk about being the first family of punting in the National Football League. Before we say goodbye, though, I'd like to give you the opportunity to add anything you'd like to wish to extend to our listeners.
Yes. I think the more the fan base builds for football in general, the better it is for our country. Football, I think I read the other day that it's up 22% this year overall. University of Tennessee had their largest single year of donations, the 22-23, I guess, fiscal year of $131 million. That's the effect Heifetz had at the University of Tennessee. So football is important because there's a whole lot of men and boys that would be big trouble with the testosterone we have in our heads. My son is crazy, so football is a huge outlet for them, to control that energy men have. So support football, go Vols, go Steelers. The name, image, likeness, I really like that. That's a tough period in college when you don't have any money. So It's about time.
Well, I also like to give a shout out to my alma mater. You may have heard of Slippery Rock University of Pennsylvania, but their football team has been perennial playoff team perennial for the last few years. They've made a run at the national championship several times, and go Rock because they're number 7 in the country again this year, undefeated heading into today. They're playing Indiana University of Pennsylvania today, who's kind of been their nemesis. Every time we have a nice run on the schedule and we run into Indiana, we always end up losing. So hopefully today Slippery Rock will win that game. But one of my friends from college who played on the team, Rick Porter, actually made the NFL around 1983. Played for Detroit and I think a couple other teams. So he had some 15 minutes of fame in the NFL, but he actually made it there from little old Slippery Rock. So it was kind of neat.
Awesome. So you never know. I tell men all the time. A lot of times I'll just initiate a conversation with a man or even his wife or together or separately. I said, you don't know who you have in your household. They're not a serial killer, but my two sons were just strong-willed little boys, and they end up playing the NFL. Support them. Give them opportunities, reach out to other families to give them opportunity. I coach for free for kickers and punters. And when they get scholarships, it's amazing, the feeling, because I saved their parents, tens of thousands of dollars, if not, a couple of $100,000. So,
wow. Well,
yeah,
two more.
Football's a huge opportunity for a lot of people.
Yeah. Well, two more things before I let you go. One, your thoughts on the Steelers' current punter, because this guy, he looks like a linebacker. He's one of the biggest punters I've ever seen. And he had a great night.
Yeah, he reminds me of Reggie Roby.
Yeah, I remember Reggie Roby. Uh-huh.
Yeah.
They're built the same way.
Yeah, Reggie Roby, when he came into the league, I said, this is what I've been thinking all along. When somebody's that big, that flexible, and that athletic, they're going to turn the football into a banana wrapped around their foot. It just kicks off that foot. So, it's Harmon, isn't that his H-A-R?
Yeah, Presley.
Presley.
And he had a great night last week in Las Vegas. So, I mean, he just did a fantastic job.
Door, baby.
Well, the one thing you don't see anymore is the coffin kicks. Oh my God! When I was watching football in the 70s and 80s, that was like so popular, and I'm sure you've done it. But coffin kick seems to have gone by the wayside.
That's all I did. Is I just I nosed the ball and just shot it like a pass and tried to put it out inside the 10. But now it's they do the Aussie kick and it's got a backspin on it, and they're hoping to fumble the ball.
Right.
That's what. And, because if you're kicking it straight out of bounds like I did, it's over, but, Dustin and Britton both were very good at that Aussie kick. And the whole idea is to make a fumble, or when it hits the ground, it kicks back.
Sure.
Yeah, it's very effective.
Well, before I let you go, is there any way that the listeners can find you on the internet with a website or anything that might be of interest to them that will just lead them to you?
Yeah, I appreciate that. I'm actually on Instagram. I'm on Facebook and LinkedIn, but I don't pay for any of that. I just post things around. But I'm about to move that along, because look this up, you'd probably be interested in it too. A group of investors put together a company called Millions, like the money, Millions.co. And that is a marketing website for athletes of every genre, from auto racing to football to you name it. Lady boxers on there. So it's a great thing for us, because they're printing up shirts and doing all these things and splitting the profits 80-20 to the athlete, 80%.
Wow.
So awesome. It's a big deal. Yeah, they put I think like $45 million out there to get this thing going. So that's something I'm hoping to connect with too. Just have fun.
Yeah,
I'm kind of an entrepreneur at heart.
Yeah. Did you say there was a website connected to that? What was that website?
I don't have a website yet. I've got CraigColquitt.com, but right now it's down. But we'll Millions.co. Okay. The fans can go to that, check it out. I think because there's a lot of athletes on there now.
Oh, I'm definitely going to be looking at that. So once again, I'd like to thank Super Bowl champion Craig Colquitt for joining our show. We wish Craig well in his future endeavors, and there will be another podcast coming very soon regarding some baseball history. Another podcast is in the works for a discussion on boxers from the 1970s and 1980s, and I'll be joined by previous guest Charles Slavic for that discussion. For Total Sports Recall and Craig Colquitt, this is your host, HARV Aronson, representing the Sports History Network, wishing everyone well until the next podcast.
Harv, thanks very much.